Мы начинаем дискуссию об инвестициях в технологии.
We are ready to start the panel discussion on investment in technology, development of business, digitalization of business, AI, cybersecurity, cloud solutions, new platforms create demand for technological products and services. On the other hand, investors
И санкционные риски. Эксперты разберутся, стоит ли инвестировать в российскую
face the constraints of foreign market sanction risk and the difficulty with scaling. Is it worth investing in the Russian tech sector now, or additional incentives needed? Please welcome
Наталья Логинова, директор департамента
Natalia Loginova, Director of the Department for Customers, Moscow Exchange, Yulia Povolotskaya, General Director of the Moscow Venture Fund, Anna Kurbatova,
старший аналитик
Senior Analyst,
АО «Альфа-Банк»,
Alpha Bank,
Алексей
Alexey Linetsky, Influencer, Investor in Technology Companies, and Yuri Marinichev from Positive Technologies.
Друзья, всем добрый вечер. Спасибо,
Dear friends, and a very good evening to all of you. It's a pleasure to see you here. It's not the first time that we are holding Investors' Day within the framework of Positive Hack Days, but it's for the first time that we are organizing an Investors' Day here at the main stage. That means that we are trying to promote not only positive technologies, but all of the technology sector overall, and we wanted to talk about the investment in technology. The motto of this festival is technology is in your hands, but we want the technology also to be in your portfolio. So how can we make technology attractive to venture funds, to private investors, to other stakeholders? And today we have gathered here representatives of the market, including the stock market, who will discuss the attractiveness of investment into high-tech companies. So let's start, Anna, with you. Bank analysts, investment analysts often write about the technology sector as such. Which companies are included into the sector? Does this definition cover only IT?
Да, Юр, спасибо. Давайте начнем.
Yes, Yuras, thank you. And yeah, indeed, let's start with definitions.
Технологический сектор, технологические компании.
People often talk about technology sector, technology companies, and companies of growth companies. Some people deem these notions to be one and the same, but others believe that there is difference between a growing company, a company of growth. It may be any company, a retail company. Conventional retail may grow through geographical expansion, and not all IT companies grow. Say take Oracle plus 6% last quarter, IBM and Intel plus 0.1% year on year. So we have to distinguish between these categories. If you take a global cross-section, then the technology company and the technology sector definition is rather unclear. You will never find one and only definition. Bloomberg classifies the technology sector as to include chip makers, component and elements manufacturers, household appliances, consumer appliances as well, hardware vendors, IT services. If you look at NASDAQ 100, the tech index of NASDAQ, there the composition is much more varied. IT, hardware, cybersecurity, and fintech, online gaming, media, social media. So basically, it's an intuitive. Biotech may also be included into the technology sector because that's also technology. It's up to you what you include into the definition. But probably the main criterion here is innovation. All these companies survive, and their basis for competitiveness is innovations. And the large engineering team that promotes and advances the products and services, probably we should also mention that they operate in dynamic markets. Here at Alpha Bank in Russia, if we talk about traded companies, we've got telecom companies, internet platforms, IT proper, and we also have a dilemma, whether to include sharing companies there. Are they technology companies or are they conventional business of renting out the vehicles with technology add-on.
Спасибо большое, Ань. Наталья,
Right, thank you. This is a broad definition. Natalia, you represent the Moscow Stock Exchange. That means you represent infrastructure. And I'm sure there are companies who approach you with offerings of placement. And probably many of them call themselves technology companies. What is the perspective of the stock exchange on a technology company? Who would you grade as such? Yes, thank you for the question. The stock exchange has an answer. Since 2009, we have been running the so-called innovations sector within the stock exchange. It's called the market of innovations and investments properly. And we decided to have such a name for this unit as to cover companies that invest themselves, who are investing into technology themselves. And you ask, what is an innovative company for us? Well, let's start with the simplest answer. There is a register of IT companies, so that company must be on the register. It should be a company that designs applications or services for the register of science and technology, and so that's the second register. And it's the company that uses innovative technologies in its activities. So kick sharing, for instance, to answer Anna's question, well, for us, kick sharing is within the innovation sector, without a doubt. We have the sector in the market, and it's important to know that. Why? Because this sector offers allowances and benefits for the investor. If you buy a paper from this sector, and if you keep it for a year, you are excused, you are exempted from the profit tax if you kept that particular security in your portfolio for more than a year. So we've got 14 companies there. We've got biotech, we've got media, we've got telecom, we've got IT, we've got kick sharing. We've got shares of positive technologies, our favorite issuer. But the special allowance covers only the companies with small capitalization. This allowance was offered to intensify the investors' demand for growing companies. But positive is now big. You are no longer a small growing company. You don't need that support. But other companies can market this special exemption for the investors. Actually, we don't have that much choice in the market in terms of innovations. There was this recent study on 100 largest Russian companies. Only 11 of them are traded. And that's very little. IMOX index, that's the main market index, their weight. And I understand that we are limiting ourselves only to IT companies in that side. It's only 6%, including our big and beautiful Yandex. So that means that we have a lot of room to maneuver. Any technology, not just IT technology, has a lot of room to penetrate in the stock market. So we think that, yeah, it's one of the more promising sectors in terms of the rate of growth. Okay, there is room for growth. That's good news. That's good to know. We'll go back to that later, but let's discuss what we have now in the market and where investors can invest. Alexei, you are investing into many interesting companies, and the latest placement, especially latest placement, you covered those as well. As an investor, the technology sector, is it still one of the more appealing to investors? Yeah, that's an interesting question. I do invest heavily into IT, but not just IT, because right now the investment environment is quite peculiar in Russia. The high central bank's rate reevaluates the whole market, and especially the IT sector. And this kind of opportunity may be over pretty soon as the key rate changes, as soon as the geopolitics changes, and we are no longer looking at such high rates. IT, is it more interesting than other sectors? Before we decide on investment, first we need to discuss what investment is. Many invest into shares to get results in 5 months' time, 12 months' time. But what we tend to forget is investing into shares is risky, and investing into shares is a long-term game. starting from 3 years and up. Today, there is a serious correction in the IT sector. We've got what's the index called? The IT sector index from MOEX. This index covers about 10 companies, and if you look at the rates there, it's minus 50. So what is a better time to invest into securities? What is the best time if the price currently is down 50%? But you have to remember that the high key rate may be with us for a very long time, and this will create negative moods across the market, including IT companies. Does business think that it's a problem, this high key rate? Well, of course, some IT sectors, companies probably are under its pressure a little bit less than others, but in any case, we understand that sooner or later it's going to change, and at one point, the central bank's rhetoric may change, and this is when it's going to, this is when the investment will stop being as lucrative as it is today. So you need to rush. I believe that IT sector is still appealing. It was appealing a year and 2 years and 3 years ago. And as a follow-up to Natalia's words, the share of IT sector in the capitalization of all Russian companies according to Moscow Stock Exchange is quite small. If you look at the American market, they have this notion of funky. So all IT companies, technology companies rather, they occupy a major share of the S&P 500 index. It is also possible that in Russia, these companies, high-tech companies, will be responsible for a big share in the Moscow Stock Exchange index. Well, it's up to investors really to achieve that. Speaking about risks, one of the risks, and people discuss that in the market, the risk of returning international competitors. As analysts, how do you treat this risk, and how do you embed this risk into assessing or evaluating public companies? Yes, thank you, Vladimir. This is an urgent question and a painful question. Well, I have to say that I'm not counting for it in my IT market model. I can't predict when exactly the tide in the market reverses or changes and affects the forecast. If I were to reason, if I were to think out loud, Google, Airbnb, Booking, Meta, and all other big IT giants who left the Russian market, think back to the end of last year. This concerns investors' concerns. A period, or coincided rather, with an overall expectations there may be a detente or some kind of a geopolitical easing. And investors were really concerned at the end of last year, and this concern remains, and it's a negative concern, really, a risk of or associated with all the things being negotiated right now. Should foreign vendors return? Should they push the Russian vendors aside? And all this incredible growth in the Russian IT sector would be restrained. But maybe if foreign investors or foreign vendors return, maybe Russian companies would lose the government support. I mean, well, I approach this subject differently. Many investors perhaps think that this may look like an instantaneous return, an instantaneous comeback. Probably this is not how it's going to happen, and when this process starts, and I say when, so it's obvious that it's not an if, it's a when. When it happens, we will never be forever isolated as a market, and business relations will be restored
когда какая-то вот геополитическая разрядка
eventually.
наступит. А
So
это
when
то,
there
что
is a
вообще наша
geopolitical
экономика ждет.
detente, and
Ждет,
this is when
снижения вот
this
этого
is
внешнеполитического давления,
an
снижения
event that the
определенности,
whole
снижения
economy
стоимости денег и
is
кредитов.
waiting
То
for.
есть
They
мне
want
кажется, что когда этот
the
момент
uncertainty to
настанет,
go
такой
down.
более
They want the
благоприятный для
prices to
всех,
go down. So
мы
when
будем говорить уже о другом поведении
this
нашего рынка
better
на уровне
time
заказчиков.
comes,
Да?
we will be
Они будут,
talking about a
во-первых,
different
наверное,
customers'
в
behavior in the
условиях
markets.
более
Probably,
благоприятной ключевой ставки работать.
if the key rate is more
Будет уже
favorable,
нормализованный вектор инвестиций в
the
целом, и в
investment will
IT-проекты в
be more
частности.
normalized, if you
И
will,
речь, вот этот вот момент,
and
когда
they will
вот этот вот
be
возврат,
investing
наверное, не о том, вот какую
more
долю
adequately into IT. So it's
иностранные
not
игроки.
really
Первичный
about
вопрос,
what
каков
share
будет
foreign
наш рынок
players
по
are going
масштабам
to
к тому
regain, but
моменту,
the
и
question
как
is
он
how
будет
big the
возвращаться.
Russian
И
market will
хорошо
be
бы, когда
by the
впоследствии
time
наш рынок
when foreign
сможет
vendors
как бы
return.
предоставить возможность для
So
работы
hopefully at
всем.
that
Да?
time the market will be big
Рынок у нас
enough
не
to
маленький.
accommodate everyone.
IT, там,
Russia's
по
market
разным
is not
оценкам,
small.
от 2 триллионов до больше, чем
IT
5, если по
segment
максимальной
is
оценке,
2
за
to 5
24 год. Есть что
trillion
делить, да?
worth.
Точно
It's
можно
a big
говорить о том,
pie
что
to share.
как было раньше, уже точно не будет.
Of course, things will not be as they used to be before.
Идет очень интенсивная
Lately,
дискуссия,
the discussion is going on
власти и
that
участников
involves
рынка на тему того,
government authorities and marketplace
и на каких условиях
about how we should get ready to this comeback and what should be the conditions to readmit the foreign vendors to the Russian IT market. Well, not just the IT market, but all other sectors that were abandoned by international players 3 years ago.
Государство будет формулировать условия
And obviously, the government
к процедурам возврата.
will set the conditions on the
Совсем не факт, что они
return
будут
procedure and
комфортными, да, для
operations in the market. Probably these conditions will not, or not necessarily, the conditions will be comfortable for the returning international vendors. Roskomnadzor around March was, well, they were mostly talking about the digital companies.
Здесь открывать в России
They
представительство,
said that it would be a good idea to make these companies open their offices in Russia, be completely Russian companies, to store the data on local services, remove the illegal content, etc., etc. So to make them do all these things that they avoided doing before they left.
можно упомянуть, что
As to other initiatives, there is an idea of imposing prohibitory tariffs or duties on foreign vendors, make them compensate for the losses that Russian customers incurred in 2022 following the drastic exit. Because they didn't supply the equipment, they didn't install the software. So obviously, it will be market 2.0 for the international companies. It will not be the same. And as to the share of the pie, obviously, it will also be smaller for them. The regulation in place since 2022, including the law on procurement of only domestic software for the critical infrastructure, the decree of the president on information security, and there will be also regulation on trusted appliances. So it's a whole set of regulation that's not going anywhere. So no one is discussing its termination or revocation. So this will be a new legal environment also for the foreign players. If memory serves me right, about 200 vendors left the Russian market. I'm sure that all of them will want to return to this new environment. This is going to cost them money because a comeback is investment. They will have to hire again. They will have to restore the links that they severed when they left. And this regulation, it also has already cut off much of the market from them, the government, the large corporations. That's about 40-50% of all the demand. So the foreign vendors will only have access to mid-sized business,
ниши рынка.
and perhaps some unregulated niches of the market.
Поэтому вот какой-то катастрофы точно я не вижу,
So
что
I don't think that there will be a disaster
этот процесс будет иметь какой-то одномоментный, да.
for the Russian companies. If foreign companies return, I think they will be returning on a case-by-case basis, and they will be coming back to a completely new environment.
Вот этот возврат случается,
And should this comeback happen,
сюда,
I think that
им сюда, к нам, и нашим компаниям,
Russian companies,
наверное, можно...
I mean, for Russian companies, it should be a mirror image, so, and the Russian companies will go back to the foreign markets that were made inaccessible to them, the transboundary payments, etc., the export of the Russian products. Probably Russian products will have more export opportunities. Say 2026, right? That means 4 years of full-fledged import substitution, and Russian companies will be capable of serving export markets to a much greater degree than they used to in the past. In import substitution, all segments of software and hardware, they started from different levels or positions. Historically, in some segments, the share of the Russian companies was big, in others it was tiny. Operating systems, license. I mean, we understand that we still are. We have different level of strength and different niches, and if international competitors return, those will be hit harder who have gone a shorter way during that time. International competition also has a healthy function. There are many companies who are participating in the import substitution process, but in the long term, probably their products are not too promising. So if foreign vendors come, maybe this will again incentivize these companies to leave the market and for the market to consolidate around the players who are most strong from the technology point of view. Well, thank you very much for this detailed overview. Of course, there are always risks and opportunities. It's good to know that there are prospects ahead, even if there are risks as well. Those companies who made use of the new opportunities, they are growing faster than they used to in the past. And of course, stock exchange placements. Natalia, we had several placements in those years, and probably the practice of this, or the example of these companies is also driving the market. They set an example to the market. What are the current innovations at the stock exchange? What are the trends that these companies set at the stock market? Well, what we were observing actually is that Russian retail investors, local investors, have the highest demand for IT companies. So it's an open secret. No wonder everyone kept buying IT for several seasons in a row. Why? Because it was the fastest growing sector. In 3 years, from 2022, the revenue of these companies consolidated grew twofold. It doubled, so everyone wanted to get on it, get a piece of it. As to innovations, we always were hoping that Russian investors would be able to diversify their investments, not invest just into oil and gas. It's still a major share of IMOX. Our index is less than 50%, but well, it's 48%, while IT is only 6%. So it would be wonderful if we had more conversions there. And emergence of new IT companies gives people an opportunity to diversify. Companies from the industry who were not familiar neither to legal or to legal entities nor to a retail investor, like cybersecurity. People ask questions: what is cybersecurity? What is it all about? What are these companies? So. But now, since people get to hear more about spam and fraud and attacks, it got everyone thinking that maybe these companies are worth looking at, and if they are growing, and according to global assessments, this is $1 trillion worth market. Probably in Russia, this market is also set to grow. But I mean, because these are the risks that any company, public or private, is facing. So Russian investors are now entering new segments, fast-growing segments of the market. It's a learning curve. First, when technology companies came to the market, they help improve the literacy of the investors. We are better versed in our own economy. We didn't know the nuances of this market. Now we're familiar with them. We don't know what these companies did, what was their product, but now we know what their product is. It's something that we have always loved doing, this outreach, this kind of education, this kind of awareness raising. Now, besides, this is a completely new practice, and probably I'll sound naive, but let me just say that positive, when it came to the market, it revolutionized our dealings with the retail investors. We have been long telling Russian companies, please pay attention that there are investors, retail investors in Russia. We've been in dialogue with the companies since 2010, end of 2010, 10 years. But Russian corporations somehow couldn't get their head over it, that Russian local investor is important, is useful, and you need to learn how to work with these investors. No one knew how. And then positive came a new segment, cybersecurity, Euro came. And since that time, best practices are being shared and being produced in the relations with Russian investors, between the investors and the issuers. Finally, we have people who are telling everyone how to do it. You know, that's the best practice.
And of course, there were some pitfalls. No one is ideal, no one is perfect, per aspera ad astra. But nevertheless, high-tech companies taught other companies how to work with a pool of investors. For instance, the MOEX reports, who no one read before, now became of interest to everyone because, thanks to the person sitting to the right of me, now everyone knows how to improve relations with investors. And you do deserve the credit. MOEX does appreciate this experience. And, high-tech was followed by other sectors and industries. Now pharma listed their shares on MOEX. And previously we didn't have in MOEX, but now we do. Some of the companies who try to compare themselves with IT, for instance, Promomed was the very first pharma company that listed its shares. And now it's set a benchmarking for new sectors, and anyway, everyone is going to be compared against the IT sector. Of course, we do welcome this story. Let me reiterate once again, technologies is something that serves as a source for growth for any industry. Cost-cutting, labor, productivity, and so on and so forth cannot survive without technology. Thank you so much. Thank you for appreciating what we do, and we'll be happy to help you develop the market. Of course, investors choose the companies not just for the great events such as this and great customer relations, investor relations. Of course, the business should be properly evaluated, and this is something that I want to talk about. First, I'm going to give the floor to Alexei, then Anna, and then Yulia. We all have different views on how to evaluate high-tech companies. However, there is a popular stance that the tools used to evaluate the investment attractiveness of steelworks, consumer companies, are not really applicable to the IT industry. More thought-out tools are necessary because the growth rates are high. The IT companies reinvest in their development. So how do you go about evaluating IT companies? IT companies don't have that many analogies. For instance, benchmarking is a way to compare yourself against someone else of a similar nature. But, for instance, MOEX lists just one cybersecurity system. IT companies, well, there are a maximum of 2 of them listed on MOEX. So what do you think about benchmarking, and what should an investor take into account to properly evaluate an IT company? I believe that this is the most complicated question because, some people say that the glass is half full, others say that it's half empty. So as far as investments are concerned, we're always talking about trust and expectations. Therefore, when you buy any asset, you have to stay positive and be an optimist. If you are being pessimistic in your evaluations, you are not going to invest any money into anything. You will just accumulate resources without making them work and making a profit. A business evaluation is very labor intensive, and given the current environment, it's difficult to say that any share is properly evaluated. When reports are published, for instance, you wanted to get a growth rate or a revenue growth rate of 30% or 70% year over year, and you don't see anything in terms of growth. You question yourself: is it a one-off or is it a systematic thing? If it's systematic, then we were wrong in our evaluation, and that means that our payback is going to take too long. The return on investment is going to be high. If it's a one-off factor that we experienced just this year, it's nothing to worry about. It's an investment risk, and without this investment risk, you can hardly make any profit. If you buy any security, first and foremost, you buy a risk. Let me emphasize the following. The IT industry and the high-tech industry are probably the 2 most risky sectors. Oftentimes, companies don't have many assets. Even the assets they have are non-tangible. How do you evaluate them? If you are not experienced in that, it's next to impossible to evaluate non-tangible assets. You can hardly predict future revenue or profits or any KPIs. Based on our experience of dealing with public companies, we stick to just short periods of time, such as a quarter, 6 months, or a year. And the miscalculation could be not just dozen%, but like 50% or 70%. That could be the margin of error, and that poses additional risk. But there is a rule for investors: the higher the risks, the higher the potential revenue. Therefore, when you evaluate a company, when you choose a company, the first thing I pay attention to is the managers, the C-suite, the shareholders, because if they are willing to undertake these risks, and if I know that these people have been in business for a very long time, if they know how to properly evaluate the risks, then I will be willing to jump into the same boat. Secondly, I evaluate the products and the markets the company works in, because the IT sector, the high-tech sector, you name it, work in a very limited markets that can stagnate, they can rapidly develop on the other hand, and things might change because of a different law that has been passed, or an M&A deal, or one company leaving the market. It might so happen that
у которого уже сегодня понятно, что нет будущего. И, к сожалению, такие компании...
Oftentimes, there are companies that might lose money. What I love about cybersecurity is that it's something that we will not make do in the future. Retail would be another good example, especially if it's a high-tech retail. Financial industry, a high-tech or a fintech is another interesting domain. We will not be able to live without finances. So let me draw the following analogy. What we cannot make do in a decade. And this is a way to draw conclusions. As for the price, this is just a subjective view of a market. And it's always wrong. And it's not my quote. It's a quote by Benjamin Graham, who wrote a book titled A Smart Investor. Read it. Everything is there. Anna, what are you guided by when you evaluate a company? Well, my response to this question might probably reiterate something that Natalia already mentioned: education and raising awareness. And Alexei mentioned trust.
Специфика оценки, вообще оценка всегда это каверзные вопросы.
Evaluation is always a complex matter, and there are certain specifics in evaluating high-tech companies, and the same holds true for rapid growth companies. In the past, rapid growth companies, if your revenue growth rates are 20%, then you're considered to be a rapid growth company.
Конечно, 20% это кратно, несколько раз по
20% means that the risks were high as compared to the non-risk assets. Right now, the situation is more complex, given a base rate of 21%. What should we consider to be a rapidly developing business? If you demonstrate an annual growth rate of 40%, investors do not consider such a company to be a rapid growth rate. It should be 50 or 60 plus, or even higher. Because, bonds, federal bonds, and deposits that give you a yield of 16 or 20% plus, it's like being an Alice in a Wonderland. If you want to stay in the same place, you have to keep running. If you want to get somewhere, you need to run twice as hard, to paraphrase the famous quote. So it's difficult to even define a rapid growth company. As for evaluating high-tech companies, there are certain specifics, because we're talking about non-tangible assets and technologies. We're trying to evaluate a team. I'm evaluating 14 companies out of the industry, and only 5 out of 14 give us a physical equivalent that we can actually measure to compare it with other industries. For instance, in other industries, we use tons of cubic meters. In the high-tech industry, it's not the case. It's a B2B contract-based industry, and each contract is tailor-made. We don't have a quantity or a price. We cannot multiply one by the other and get your answer. So when investors evaluate high-tech companies, we pay attention to the quality metrics, such as what kind of product is manufactured by the company, what team mans the company, how innovative is it is. Will it survive in the market? What the market looks like? Who are the customers? Who are the business customer? And what impacts the business of the customers? You have to roll out the entire supply chain from subcontractors to the customers. Customers might be repeated customers, and that means that, and they might experience certain cycles in their business, and that means that you're going to be susceptible to their cycles. Unfortunately, an external observer or an investor gets fewer inputs to evaluate a high-tech company by. Therefore, we need to be proficient on how to evaluate quality. And by the way, as far as the B2B market is concerned, a cybersec company listed its shares on the MOEX, and now everyone wants to plunge into the new domain. This is what we have to do every time around. It's not like your brick-and-mortar bank or retail store or steelworks. You have to use your imagination to evaluate a high-tech company. By the way, as far as trust is concerned, investing into buying shares does not guarantee profits. It's like, do you trust me? And you bet your money against trust. You buy an object of art, hoping that the price will go up and you will be able to resell it at a higher price. If you buy shares and they go down, all you get is invaluable experience. So be responsible in your investments, and please carefully read the reports by analysts who are experts on this domain. And paintings can catch fire, be destroyed. So investors undertake risks anyway. Please share your experience with us. Yulia represents the Moscow VC fund. What projects do you invest in? And is VC financing in demand with companies who want to invest their money and those who want to be invested in? Good evening. I was just wondering who is attending the session, so that I want to know so that I can give you a precise answer. Who represents high-tech businesses? Please raise your hands. So that makes about 15% of you. Please raise your hand if there are any investors in the room. See, there are more investors in this room than high-tech businesses. And actually, that gives me some hope. The Moscow VC fund is an innovative institution. No matter what we do, we aim to create favorable conditions for high-tech companies, and our target audience actually includes high-tech companies. We don't deal with investors directly, but without investors, high-tech companies won't be able to develop. Anyway, we focus our attention on the company itself, and we use quite clear-cut metrics mentioned by the previous speakers. First and foremost, it's the team that we evaluate. A project is a long-lasting story because when they come for funding to us, our objective is to understand whether this story is going to be profitable and sustainable. You know, teams are highly motivated, they are driven, and for us, it's one of the most important metrics. Another thing which you can hardly do without is the unique value proposition or unique product. But you have to be careful about that because, you know, you can grow hairs on a billiard ball, but it will interfere with the game. So in addition to being unique, a product should be in demand in the market. It, you know, should be scalable. And another thing which is a prerequisite for VC investment is the explosive growth rate. If you invest a single Russian ruble and it'll help the company to demonstrate some super high results in 3 years' time, then it's a good deal. What do you mean by exponential growth rate? In percentage points, 20% is not a high growth, right? Well, I want to get at least 10 rubles in 10 years' time if I invest just 1 ruble. I think that would be a good growth rate. But, you know, the devil is in the details. Sometimes our expectations are just wishful thinking. And the Moscow VC fund creates the support infrastructure on the one hand, and we came up with a range of opportunities for the high-tech businesses. We invest jointly with private investors. So we are part of the Moscow government structure. So we usually partner up with private companies who invest their own funds so that we can mitigate the risks. We offer 3 programs. The first one is for the small companies, that's the pre-seed and seed stages. These are the companies that suffer losses, huge losses, but their teams are highly driven to help the company survive. And we're prepared to fund them with up to 50 million Russian rubles with an interest rate of 10% for 2 to 3 years. And not a single bank will issue a loan at such an interest rate right now. The second category are those companies that want to scale up. It's seed plus round A. They should generate some revenue, and they can get up to 300 million Russian rubles at an interest rate of 10.5%. And we are ready to consider some equity participation. So it's not just a loan. And if it takes off, then we'll buy some equity. We'll be partial owners. And the third program is IPO. It's entering public markets. This is a program for mature companies. They are transparent and they are ready to work in earnest. They can get a loan of up to 100 million just to get ready for the IPO or for issuing bonds. And if it's a young company, any figures that you can share with us in terms of how many companies actually reach the end of the journey from the scratch? Well, I do have this figure, but it leaves much to be desired. There's always room for improvement. Last year, about 1,500 projects were submitted to us, and being a business unit of the Moscow government, we give the priority to the Moscow-based companies. 1,500 projects were submitted, and at the end of the year, we invested into 100 public deals. It's not just the deals that the Moscow VC fund took part in, but we were involved to a certain extent. I represent the Moscow VC fund and the Moscow Innovation Cluster, and we go side by side to provide a comprehensive support to our company. Overall, 100 projects were financed by our fund. Compared to 2021, this is a very insignificant figure. So my follow-up question to Alexei and to you would be as follows. Are all IT companies of interest to the investors? We're talking about the IT sector, right? And there are lots of IT companies in the segment. Some of them are newcomers, some of them are new in the market. So how do we differentiate between those who would be interesting for investors and those who would not be? Well, we'll have already given you the answer. The product should be in demand. This is one of the most frequently asked questions. Is this company of interest to the investors? My question to you would be, do you use their services or product? If you don't, then it's not. If you don't even imagine a situation that would force you to use their products or services, and in that case, I don't see any sense in buying their shares or equity. Another factor would be a strong competitor. Let's say a company produces and manufactures a product or a service, but there is a strong rival who is not just a little bit better, but who is way better, and that includes the price. And that means that the company has no future. It only survives because of some fringe benefits, preferences, or some sideline projects. Maybe it's part of a holding company. Maybe the parent company has been financing this subsidiary for 10 to 15 years, and now all of a sudden they decided to get financing from the investors who are not real pundits. I would not be interested in a company like that. It's going to be a trigger for me. What projects and companies do you reject from the get-go? Well, we don't focus on IT as an industry, by the way. When we identified the high-tech sector, we based our assumptions on the following. Moscow is based on the following three pillars: IT, science, and technology. If an IT achievement is based on a scientific breakthrough, then this is something that we love. We have a special KPI to motivate investments and attract investments into R&D. Industry is basically the same, so IT is on a par with the previous two. So statistically wise,
из всего массива поддержанных проектов 70% будет
70% would go to the IT, to the software, and 30% would go to the hardware development. Though we try to even it out, so it's 50-50. Got it. So it's similar to the MOEX. They have an innovations index which was covered by Natalia. Natalia, my next question goes to you. Let's say a company issues shares, goes into IPO, and 2 or 3 years down the line, of course, they are in constant touch with the MOEX. They share their reports and impressions with you. So when shareholders or top managers share their experience with you, do they all say that they're happy with going public and launching an IPO? Well, they might be lying, but all of them say that they saw some wow effect. The only complaint is that they say you should have told us about the importance of working with relations with investors before we actually went public, and they blame the MOEX for not teaching them. But nevertheless, they still experience the wow effect, and primarily it stems from the fact that the company gets feedback. By the way, going public for any company is interesting because almost free of charge, you get not just the profit, but also a unique opportunity to get direct feedback from the market, whether you do something right or wrong. The market will immediately give you the feedback, and non-public companies don't have that luxury. And we believe that's why the non-public companies are less efficient than public companies, and there is scientific data to back this up. This effectiveness stems from transparency. Despite the fact that they have to publish the reports that they didn't publish before, and they have to comment on some KPIs that they didn't have to do before, they don't like CEOs, executive officers without portfolio initially, but then they start loving them, and the combination of these factors makes them better. The wow effect is mentioned by everyone. The second story is linked to motivation. Shares motivate you because money no longer does that. Trust and recognition would be another part of the story. And I believe that recognition is important for the new generation. People aged 50 plus say money beats recognition all the time, which is not the case for the youngsters. And in Russia, this tool is not that popular, but I really hope that it will take off in the future. There are companies that put their bets on shares as a tool for M&A. They don't use the money to buy out companies, especially if the strategic goal is to consolidate the market. They use their shares to consolidate the market rather than the funds that they can spend elsewhere. Corporate governance is something that I already mentioned. Independent directors is part of the story. Transparency is the second part of the story. Minority shareholders, influencers, key opinion leaders, ask questions, give hints, share tips and tricks, challenge them. In a very invisible way, it boosts the efficiency of a company. And the market cap for a public company is a precise metric that depends on the corporate governance. And by the way, 9 to 10% of additional market cap stems from the well-developed corporate governance system, and usually it is only true for public companies. Therefore, when people say that it's too expensive to go public, that bankers are greedy, that all consultants want to make money on us, that's just not true. And going public will help you if you are not an introvert and if you don't want to stay in the shadow. But we are not here to talk about that. So that's a big advantage for most of the companies, going public. We work in a market which lacks Google or Microsoft that everyone is aware of. And increasing public awareness is one of the objectives to go public, especially if you want to boost your sales. Going public raises public awareness about your company, and this is especially important for Russia, where the market is definitely a leader in engaging retail in the stock exchange. Decision makers see a mobile app of your company on their smartphones, and now they appreciate your company. Everyone knows about Astra. Positive technologies would be another example. We had an in-house dialogue when we demonstrated the case, and the decision makers would ask us questions like, who are they? What do they do? No one knew positive technologies. Now they're aware after our pitch. We are up the learning curve, and any company that goes public that lists its shares in the stock exchange uses the leverage of public awareness. Once again, very few high-tech companies have gone public. I don't know, maybe they're lying, but all of them say that there is a wow effect. So let's make sure that the experience of the previous companies will make the market more attractive for others. One other thing that I want to mention, companies who say that it's too expensive to go public, the government has recently approved a decision to subsidize part of the IPO costs. These are small high-tech companies that will get this benefit. And the executive order has already been signed, and IPO costs will be offset. And that was one of the last questions. We have just a couple of more minutes to go. Any other incentives or engines that might be necessary for the high-tech companies to ultimately ask for some financing in whatever form to ensure further high growth rates? Anything to add? Well, if I may, I've been following high-tech companies for quite a number of years, and I believe that the most important issue is, the availability of low interest rate public loans. Technological sovereignty is one of the top priorities, but there are limited resources, right? But nevertheless, tech-savvy companies need as much money as possible. So that's my main comment. I would put it this way. The task for the government is to create transparent conditions for both the transparent support conditions and level playing field. And the support can be split into two parts: non-financial support and financial support. I already covered the financial part: subsidies, grants, low interest rate loans, and so on and so forth. As for the non-financial support, it turned out to be also important for the high-tech companies. They lack investment culture and investment and culture of dealing with innovations. When we provide them with the toolbox, it turns out that it's easy for startups to establish investor relations, and ultimately they can enter the public markets and so on and so forth. And the Moscow government gives you every opportunity to do that. Don't be afraid of going to us. We are not toxic. Support is great, but giving a high base rate, no matter what the subsidies are and no matter what support is, it will still put high pressure on the budgets of the consumers. Even for private individuals, a high base rate limits us in our decisions on what to spend the money on. Should I spend more money, or should I put it on a deposit at an interest rate of 21%? Maybe I will postpone my vacation for 6 months to make more money, and that will make my vacation better. And the second problem that we did not touch upon is the FX rate of the Russian ruble, and we are trying to come up with profitable investment ideas. But while these two problems persist, it will be difficult for us to expect some high return on our investments. We'll be looking forward to that. One last question: an express opinion poll. We talked about the current status of affairs, the outlook, but investors want to fund some interesting ideas. Are there any unicorns or unicorn industries that might be of interest to investors? And I'm talking about unicorns who are not public yet, who are unknown to anyone. Any ideas, any views to share? I'll be really brief. We believe that seed investments are an indicator of a niche being promising. Keep a close eye on investors investing into seed companies. They might be your next unicorn. Great. I would say that AI companies, UAVs, drones, everything linked to the digitalization and Industry 4.0, online education, edutech, online healthcare, drones and anti-drone protection are the domains of high interest. Robotics, robotic-based industrial technologies, and AI-based combinations of industry and robotics. Natalia, what does MOX dream of? Well, I would agree with everything else, and in addition to that, the gold rush I want to mention. Actually, during the gold rush, it was not the gold diggers who made the most money, but rather those who sold the spades to them. Data center employees, chips, microchips, and we might, start producing high-quality microchips in huge numbers. E-commerce, online sales would be another interesting domain, and many new players might enter this new domain, despite the fact that there are huge companies that already operate there. Software development. I'm a huge fan of the e-government, and no matter what country we would visit, we wouldn't see an analog there of the e-government. The e-government concept was developed by our local developers, and it's an ingenious idea. I'm talking about the software part and the hardware part. So software development is going to stay promising, and I think it's going to be one of the rapidly developing industries in Russia. Ladies and gentlemen, I think we exhausted the discussion on the high-tech sector. We generated a number of interesting ideas for investors. We also touched upon some of the companies who would be of interest to investors, and I really hope that this session was useful and interesting for all of us. Please don't go away. We will continue in a couple of minutes. We will be talking about positive technology.